Hey guys, Steve Shermer here with Enviado. That's my company name, and welcome to our first video. I want to talk to you about something. So, as you know, if you've been watching the news, we had Hurricane Helene strike almost 2 weeks ago tomorrow, actually. I was in that path of destruction. At least thankfully, we weren't the worst, but we were definitely not far, maybe 45 minutes away from part of the worst. That struck in western North Carolina. Of course, then yesterday, Hurricane Milton slams the western coast of Florida. More devastation, lots of friends there. Of course, we've got mudslides, flooding in Nepal that took place in the last 2 weeks. There's wars going on in the Middle East. There's the Ukraine-Russian war. There's so much. So enviado, so let me start with this. So enviado is Spanish for sent. And so as a Christian, I believe that God has designed me for purpose, for his purpose, and I'm what the Bible would refer to as a sent one. So as someone who goes into the world to be salt and light in the world, and I believe it, and I've experienced it. I've also experienced others giving it to me. So, in light of what I just said about enviado, what the name means to me, and even though it's a business name, it's a very important word for me. I want to pose a question to you. So with all these things going on in the world, with all the division that is happening in this world, especially here in the United States politically, and among various groups of people, tons of division. So I guess the question is, how do you be the Good Samaritan? How do you help change the narrative? Now, I know in some ways when we think about that question, it's like you just want to rub your head, starting to get a headache, all that nonsense. You just get overwhelmed, okay? I have many times when I was standing outside after Hurricane Helene passed through our area, and I'm outside the same day looking at the damage in my neighborhood. I stood there on the street just feeling this intense feeling of overwhelmingness. Didn't know, in that moment, I was so overwhelmed, I didn't know what to do. And so you could pose the same question, like, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the aftermath of a hurricane? How do you deal with the realities of war? How do you deal with division in our communities? How do you deal with any disaster that we come across? Or how do we deal with disasters 8,000 miles away? Because I'm also a nonprofit leader, and the nonprofit I work with, we're involved in disasters 8,000 miles from me. Okay, so how do we do it? I think it's pretty simple, okay? It's just a matter of taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and just kind of calming ourselves so that we can begin to process and think critically through what we're seeing, how we want to be involved, things like that. But to simplify it to some degree, it's like eating an elephant. Now, I'm not advocating for eating elephants for anyone out there who thinks I am. It's just a phrase. How do you eat an elephant? Why do we say that? Because elephants are massive. Okay, they are massive creatures. How do you take something so big, whether it be an elephant, whether it be, there's some place in the world they eat horse, or even a cow here in the United States. How does one person eat a cow? Well, the answer is simple. One bite at a time. So when I was standing there looking at all the devastation in my neighborhood alone, which wasn't the worst hit from Helene, I just knew I needed to pick up my chainsaw and start cutting, because we had a number of downed trees. The house next to us was just short of being decimated. When I say short of it, half the house was decimated. It had about 6 fallen trees on top of it. And I heard each and every one slam into that house. So how do you deal with that? Pick up a chainsaw and I start cutting one limb at a time. Drag it to where it needs to be. Cut another one. Drag it. Cut it. Drag it. In the process of doing that, there's a guy in my church who lives just around the corner from me. He had driven by. I know that because he told me. But when he saw that, he decided to come over and help. Now, this guy, about the same age, but he has a bad back. He has a back condition that prevents him from doing a lot of intense manual labor. But he came over and said, what can I do? I can't really deal with a chainsaw, can't do a lot of stuff, but I can do some. I said, well, can you pick up limbs? So he did. So he was able to get 30 minutes of his time, which is about all his back would do. And he picked up one limb at a time. So how do we clean up the mess? We cut a little bit, we move a little bit. We cut a little bit, and we move a little bit. And I've spent the last almost 2 weeks cutting limbs, moving limbs, clearing away the debris, one piece at a time. Like I said, at first, completely and legitimately overwhelmed. But I knew I just needed to focus on one part. And even when I was focusing at when I say a limb that I had to cut out, this wasn't like a little twig. I had this massive oak tree in the front of my house, and this one limb was the size of a tree. And so I just began cutting a little bit, cutting. It took me over a week just to get that thing cut down enough. And then it was a tree in the back, and now we have to deal with another tree, a massive pine tree. Again, one piece at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time. So when we look at everything around us, the devastation, the problems in the world, the natural disasters, how do we help? How do we help change the narrative? How do we help bring calm to our community, our society? Whether you're a Christian or not, doesn't matter. How do you bring calmness and critical thinking to those around us? One step, one act, one piece of kindness at a time. That's how you do it. I know we all may not see everything equally. We may not view the world through the same lenses, and that's okay. But when people are hurting, when people are facing things like Hurricane Helene or Hurricane Milton that hit Florida yesterday, or the floods and the mudslides in Nepal, or the wars in the Middle East, or the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, whatever it is, how do we help change the narrative? Now, we may not be able to go in and just change everything overnight. It may take a long time. But if we don't start somewhere, we're never going to end up anywhere. So as one that I believe is sent, as a sent one, as I described earlier, as I believe the Bible clearly talks about Christians and how we are classified as a sent one, that we are called to be good Samaritans. We are called to be salt and light in its various forms. And so when we bring the salt, when we bring the light, when we be and live out the Good Samaritan, when we love others as we love ourselves, or as we desire to love ourselves, we can make astronomical changes. I mean, that friend who came over for 30 minutes, did he do a whole lot? No. Did he clear a ton of debris? Not at all. But he did a little bit, and he brought me a tremendous amount of encouragement that showed me we're going to be able to tackle this massive debris that we've got to clear out. It's going to happen. 2 weeks later, still hasn't happened. We've done a lot. My yard is a lot cleaner than it was, but there's still a lot to be done. I can tell you now, standing on the street, looking at it now, looking at the pile of debris that just spans, and I have a very big yard, just spanning the street corner, so the local government can come and pick it up. I don't feel the overwhelming sense anymore, because we chipped at it one piece at a time. And now I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So whatever you're dealing with, whatever you want to help with, when you're looking at something in this world and you want to say, how can I change that for good? How can I bring peace? How can I be a peacemaker? Well, start being a peacemaker one step at a time. Start being a change agent one step at a time. Hey, thank you for watching the first episode on this channel. It is not my first time on YouTube, but it is the first episode for this specific channel. And I just appreciate you taking time to watch, especially if you've gotten this far. And so I would just encourage you to like and subscribe. I'm going to be posting this as my goal right now is one every week, if not more. And we'll continue this journey together because I strongly believe that we can make a difference, that we can be change agents, that we can be peacemakers, but all we've got to do is chip away at it one step at a time. I'll see you next time.